Okay, so hello and good evening, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of WomanFest Ghana, a 1-week festival by the Library of Africa and the African Diaspora. We are located in West Legon, and feel free to pass by over the weekend for the physical events at the festival. Friday and Saturday, all COVID-19 protocols will be observed. But tonight, we are here to have our panel session on reporting women in Ghanaian news. And I believe that this is a timely conversation considering what is happening today. There are protests in the country about fix the country. And while we are urging on the governments to fix the country, we are also urging on people to fix their mentality and the way they report women issues, stories, and related things in the news. And so I believe that this is a very timely conversation. It's really exciting that it falls on a day of protest. My name is Elizabeth Johnson, festival producer, and welcome everyone. Tonight we are joined by two very amazing panelists, and we are also going to be moderated by amazing Grace Danso. So I'll just quickly read her bio and then pass on for her to begin the conversation. So Amazing Grace Lois Danso is passionate about a wide spectrum of issues pertaining to Ghana, Africa, and the world at large, spanning gender, race, governance, social justice, activism, and faith. She loves to read and write and is a member of various advocacy groups that tackle the aforementioned issues. She has a Bachelor of Science degree in psychology, and she is currently pursuing a degree in law from the University of London and works as the Strategic Operations Coordinator for an African Economic Policy think tank in Accra. And for us as a festival, Amazing Grace was a perfect fit to moderate the session because if you know her, you know how vocal she is about issues in Ghana. Any trending issue of importance, she would definitely have something to say about it, especially those that relate to women. And so I'm very happy that she accepted this invitation. So without much more to say, I'd like to pass on the mantle to Amazing Grace. And so everyone enjoy. If you have comments or questions, please leave them in the comments box. We will take them and Amazing Grace will read them out while we are live.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth, for that wonderful introduction. I sound like a troublemaker, which I am, so which I don't shy away from. So hopefully tonight we're going to have some really deep and interesting conversations that improve the state of how women are treated and reported in our media. It promises to be a fun time, and we want this to be as interactive as possible. So please feel free, leave your questions in the chat box, and in the middle of the session, we'll try and get to as many of them as possible and feed those questions to our distinguished panelists. Without much ado, I'll go ahead and introduce them. First is Miss Lydia A. Akuffo. Elizabeth tried to ageify her and call her Auntie Lydia, but we're not having that. We're going with Miss Lydia tonight. She's a host, a reporter, translator, and a very dope voiceover artist with Obonu TV and the GBC, which is Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. So, audience, Miss Lydia Ameya. Miss Lydia, if you can give us a quick wave so everybody can identify you. There we go. All right. Next on our list is Miss Akuyo Akuntu Agbenyega. Akuyo, if I butchered your name at any point, please do correct me because I'm very particular about getting people's names right. Miss Akuyo is an associate at the firm at the Medeiros and AMP Associates. She obtained her Bachelor of Laws degree from Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology and is a member of the Ghana Bar Association. So, hey, if you're in trouble, please call Akuyo. She will defend you. She, during her undergraduate years, was a very active member of the KNUST Law Student Union, advocating for reproductive health education and justice. She later volunteered as a peer educator in Mary Stopes, Ghana, with their No Yawa campaign from 2014 to 2015. And throughout the years, she's had a very core focus on human rights, women, and girl child issues, and has participated in several programs which have sought to shed light on these societal problems and how to resolve them. I think I have a twin sister in Akuyo, so this would be a very exciting conversation tonight. So Akuyo, can you please give our audience a wave so we identify you? Yes. And you know Elizabeth, the ever illustrious, ever industrious, fantastic woman who does so much for social causes here in Ghana. She is an unofficial member of this panel tonight who I may be picking on as the conversation goes forward. So yeah, these are distinguished panelists. I hope you have a great time. Please do leave your comments and your questions in the box. And I do hope that you enjoy us for the rest of WomanFest this week and this weekend. So without further ado, I will go ahead and start us with this question. I'll start with you, Miss Lydia. What is your overall assessment of how women-related news items are reported? Sorry, Miss Lydia, you're on mute. Miss Lydia, your mic is muted.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah. Thank you very much for this opportunity given to me. Yeah. Female journalists face offline and then mostly online attacks, putting their safety and risk to stigmatization, especially in the country. So most of the time when their issues are being reported, they see as them be women or female. They are not normally attended to. Hello?
Hi. Yes, Miss Lydia, I can hear you. Just to follow up to what you were saying, or you're not done? Sorry, please do go ahead.
You continue. I'm
No,
listening.
I was just going to ask, what do you think triggers these kinds of attacks that female journalists go through?
Mostly in our country here, women are normally be stigmatized that there are certain jobs that women are not supposed to do. In our country here, most of the time, we see women to get married and nothing else. So when you try to do something better, trying to compete with the men, they see you trying to underrate or disrespect men. And those are some of the issues why it normally comes that way. To my views, please.
Thank you. Over to you, Akuyo. What is your own assessment of how women are reported in the news? And please feel free to also respond to what Miss Lydia shared.
Well, so with what I have seen as news items, most of the time they couch things as women issues. And every time something is couched as a women issue, it comes up being something on domestic violence or gender-based, some form of gender-based violence. And it's either underreported or sensationalized in some sort of way. So in that sense, you have women being reported about as either being people who are constantly being victims in situation, or certainly a marginalized group in the news media. If you are to hear anything about a woman who's done something great, it's just like a flash and then it's gone. But then most of the time it's just like the victimhood of women and all of those things that are in my opinion, overreported. Yeah. And in response to what Miss Lydia said, I think to an well, I'm not in I believe she's the best person to actually tell, because I'm not in the media, I'm not a journalist, but then from what she's saying and from what I have read, it seems like female journalists may not be given the opportunity to report some news items on the basis that, oh, if you go into this situation, you might endanger yourself, or as a woman, you should just, do the fluff pieces as opposed to the hard-hitting news that they should ideally be given the opportunity to do as well.
Thank you, Akuyo. I think there's an interesting point you made about how it seems like women are overly reported when we are victims of all manner of things. And I just want to know from you, do you think this is quite deliberate? Do they intentionally do this? And if so, what is the aim of such overrepresentation of victimhood of women?
I wouldn't say that it's deliberate, but it's just the society, the way that our society sees women, essentially. We are socialized to believe that, okay, women are the weaker sex, we are the ones who are usually taken advantage of. It's a societal thing. I think it's more of how the society sees us. And the only way I think we could actually move forward is if we change how we are socialized, and start with small changes in the ways we have conversations, the ways we actually report the news, and things like that.
Thank you. Miss Lydia, just going off on this train of thought about change and progression of these transformations, where do you think this change starts from? Is there a particular point or a particular place or level it has to start from, or is it a more complex matter?
In a short sentence, I think our beliefs and traditions can do better. What we believe in is particularly in our traditions, our communities, the tribalism, the tribe that we come from. We have other beliefs that when you do this, you do that. Yeah, we cannot continue that like that because you are a woman. If we go back to that and then start from there, I think it will be something better for us to move forward. Because maybe in a community or a town where you come from, women are not supposed to wear a tra. You're going to report on a war front. What do you wear? You cannot wear a slit and kaba to a war front, isn't it? So when we go back to our traditions and then our beliefs and we change from there, I think it will be better for us to move forward.
Okay, thank you. Elizabeth, I'm going to kick this to you. Piggyback off what Akuyo and Miss Lydia said, who are the actors or who are the change agents who will ensure these kinds of changes take root?
Well, I think first of all, it does start with the institutions who report the news, or these media houses, because they are the ones who are employing the people who would deliver their news to the masses. And so there needs to be an institutional change in the way they perceive the kinds of people they employ. For many years, women have been seen to be an more like trendsetters or people who are used to attract viewership. And so you have women reading the news because she's fair, she's pretty, for whatever reasons. And then you have much more men who are doing the field work. And so I think that with what Miss Lydia says about how we are kind of putting people in boxes too much, I think that it has to start from there, where if you are qualified to be a journalist, you should be able to do your job as a journalist, be you a man or a woman or whatever gender you identify as. That is one. And then it then comes back to the people, the masses, society, and how, again, we label gender roles and how we perceive women. And so I think that once we also need to do better in the way we kind of tell women the kinds of jobs that they can take up. And so if a woman says, or a young girl says, I want to be a journalist, they'll say, oh, you'll be a nice newscaster. So they are already putting it in her mind that she should be sitting down, delivering the news or reading the entertainment news. I think we can do better in the ways that we kind of tune the young people's minds in the kind of journalists that they would want to be. So I think that's one aspect. For the other aspect, to speak a little on the kinds of news that are reported. for me, I feel that media houses have lost their integrity in the sense that they are no longer delivering the news, but they are delivering trendy stories. And so if there's a new topic that comes up, they would pick up on it and then they would, try to trend. So every media house wants to be the first to deliver something rather than look out for things that are really bothering the society. And that's not to say that it is not important to know what people are talking about, because of course we have a government that is running us, and so it's important to be updated with what they are doing. But I think too much focus is being put into trendy stories, either politics or entertainment. And so they need to kind of get back to their job, and that is to report the important stories. And by reporting the important stories, they also have to maybe stop being a bit biased, because I mean, again, I know what I'm saying is a bit tricky, but many media houses have also been bought by these political parties. And so they would report news that is in favor of party A or party B, one way or the other. And so that also has some kind of effect. And now bringing it back to women's stories, unfortunately, piggyback on what I was saying about trendy stories. So a teenage pregnancy story would trend. And so people want to report that this number of women are, number of young girls below the age of 18 are pregnant. But then they don't want to discuss why they are getting pregnant, who is impregnating them. They just make it look like it's the girls who are just allowing themselves to get pregnant. But then it's a two-way affair, There's someone who has to entice the young lady to want to have sex and get pregnant. And so I think women and young girls are being victimized too much, taking the blame in the news. And so that's what I have to say in general with the discussion so far.
Brilliant, fantastic point. I really love that you touched on the whole colorism issue as it pertains to newscasters and how women in particular tend to be pushed in that direction. That's a very critical and important conversation that I think we don't even have time to really tease out and dive into in this particular conversation, but one that we should really note for future conversations like this. And I also did like what you said about the loss of integrity. And I'm actually going to throw my next question in that vein to Akuyo. What do you think accounts for this loss of integrity? Is it the prominence of social media and how social media moves far quicker than traditional media? Is that what's causing all of them to change? Are there ways to mitigate that and still be true to what the journalism profession demands? And before you answer, I just want to remind everyone who is watching and listening to this conversation that you are more than welcome to participate by sharing your thoughts, asking your questions in the comments box. And as the conversation goes on, we'll take some time to address those as well. So over to you, Akuyo.
I think the fact that, as you mentioned, social media plays a huge role in why journalists or the entire journalism profession is sort of shifting now into a space where we want to be the first to get there. We don't necessarily want to they don't necessarily want to verify the news. It's just what will make us get to the top, what will make us trend, what will make people click on our websites and get as much people trooping in as we can. It's to an extent the thirst for sort of what do you call it, for what's the word, for
clicks.
Sort of media clicks and media dominance is what drives them, as opposed to this bringing us the actual story, the facts behind the story, the information, the meat of the story. So that part is just wishy-washy, and then they move on. And in as much as the media is the freedom of media, there should be some form of regulation on how the media should present the news. Ideally, you shouldn't be giving us just you shouldn't necessarily just be giving us what you think. It should be what the facts are, what has happened, what the follow-ups of the transactions or whatever that's occurred. And it shouldn't just be, oh, I think this happened, and so I get clicks for just bringing you sensationalized news immediately and as fast as possible. So, yeah.
All right, thank you. Okay, coming back to our main focus about how women are represented in the media, Miss Lydia, do you think it's a matter of
Lydia, please. Lydia, please. Lydia,
all right,
please. Lydia,
all right,
Lydia,
Lydia.
Lydia.
Sure. I perfectly understand. So, Lydia, do you think the it can be addressed with more representation of female journalists, or is it that representation is not enough? It's just a mere starting point, and if that's the case, how do we build on that for women journalists to ensure that women are well represented in the news?
We have to do our best and fight when they continue to do the job. More women are supposed to come into journalism. When we dominate the place, I think the men cannot underestimate us anymore. Then our leaders, especially women in journalism or women who have big time positions, are supposed to back us. Someone like you are supposed to support us. When you have issues, you have to come to our aid. Here, in case we don't have money, you will not even assist us. Meanwhile, you have a good job, you have a good case before us, but because we don't have cash, and then let me put it this way, and then that will be the end. So if you have people like you pushing us forward, moving us forward, doing the good, then I think we can still do something about it, and this thing might come to a stop. I think so. Let me say something about what Akuyo. Let me add a little what Akuyo said. She was talking of regulation. I think if the Ministry of Communication and Information can regulate those private stations, especially the private stations, and then hello.
Hi,
Hello.
we're here.
Yes, I don't want to mention any language or any particular station, but if we are being regulated, and if they are being regulated how to present their news. Sorry, I'm really sorry. Somebody is calling through.
No problem.
I'm really sorry. So that would have been very better, and it will also help us when we do that. But this is a case where the private stations are owned by someone. It's not a government institution. And the person might think, because it is my station, this is what I can do to entice my listeners, and he's doing it. But if he or she or the institution is being regulated, I think some of these issues, we will not be following trending news and then social media and then all this, and we can do something about it. Let me give you an example of this. When a lady is raped and they are being should I use the word? When someone is being raped and then somebody is reading out the news in some languages, look at the way it goes. One day I called a colleague and I said, it was like, let me say this in Tree. And Akodu Honomono, or ye no na Akosua Akuntu no, and the share no, and no boni tumo, and no bono toje, and no bono toje, and no jeguni who say me, and no the tone mona. Then I asked, how will you feel if that lady is your sister? How will you feel if that lady is your niece? Imagine me being your friend. I'm being raped and somebody reads out a news, like, how will you feel? So I think the regulation will work. If they are being regulated, they will know how to present and when to present issues and news at the right and appropriate times. So it's a very good idea. I think if we can do this now, and you being a lawyer can do something about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lydia. Elizabeth, before I come to you, I just want to address a couple of things that she mentioned. I'm very, very happy that you brought out the issue of how rape and sexual assault is reported, particularly in our traditional languages. I can't listen to tree radio stations because of some of these things. I get so angered, and it's just a very frustrating thing. And I want to go back to what you said about, you said people like me in the position of power to back you female journalists up. I have a little beef there. um, because just a little, I mean, some of my colleagues won't say it's little, but just to keep things really nice and cool on this conversation, there was a time a group of us young feminists very passionate about women's issues were talking a lot about some of these things, and trying to hold the people who hold the power, which are most often men, accountable for some of these disastrous things that happen on the gender front. And guess what some of your colleague female journalists did? They rather attacked us, who are trying to back them, amplify them, give them some sort of leverage to even say, yeah, we agree with them. This is where we want to go.
Yeah,
No, they saw it as we were, I don't know whether we were coming or interrupting their chances with guys.
interrupting
They felt the need to rather defend the men and attack us, and even did a whole cooking
Wow.
a cooking thing to to entertain guys and appease guys and calm guys down. Like, how backward and counterproductive was such an action. So it's not that people like me don't want to back you up, but sometimes we are thrown in this position where the question becomes, is it even worth it? Because
Well,
when we try to do it, we rather face attack from you, the female journalists, and it seems to undo all the progress that we thought we were making on that front. So I just want to assure you, Lydia, that when it comes on principle, we back you and we support you, and we're going to do our very best to amplify you and your concerns. But also there is some responsibility on the female journalist front to not essentially work against their own interests, but to rather come and join us and help us collectively rid this society of the injustice that it does to women, not just in journalism, but in all fields and all sectors. So that was just what I wanted to add to that conversation. I'll just go to you, Elizabeth. I saw you had your hand up, so whatever you want to contribute.
Yeah, so I want to throw a question to Akuyo. We've been going back and forth on the regulations that are needed. And so while both Akuyo and Lydia were speaking on regulations for the production of news, something just crossed my mind, and it was the way also people react to the news. And, when it comes to women issues, of course, we know the ones that trend a lot, and we've spoken a bit on those. There's a certain way people, I don't want to say men, but it's usually men, respond to these kinds of cases, even those that are not in the news. And so let me take, for example, if a woman's nudes or story is trending and there are pictures that are involved or there's a video, a lot of people on social media are happy. Their reaction is like they're happy to see that, oh, I've gotten free nude pictures and videos to watch, pass me the link to download, all of that. And also the way these media houses and blogs pick the stories up and post them, it all goes with the regulations. And so I'm wondering, Akuyo, if there are any regulations that actually exist, and if there are any penalties that exist for enabling such content to spread without protecting the victim or the person involved. Are there any penalties that people could face for spreading someone's private photos and pictures, or issues that shouldn't be exposed to the general public, even though it is in the news?
Yes, there is the there's an act that was actually passed, and the Cybersecurity Act, which was passed in 2010. Which provides under section 6, from section 62 up until section 68. But the part that focuses particularly on online sexual, this would essentially be an online sexual offense where you're sharing intimate images of another person, or even threatening to distribute the images of another person. So there's actually an act that was passed on that particular offense. Initially, under the criminal code, we had the publication of obscene material, but then that focused more on like physical publications, so like in newspapers or in magazines or something of that sort. But then the law realized that there was a gap in that whole legal system. So then they came up with the Cybersecurity Act, which criminalizes sharing of a person's nudes and all of those things without their consent. But when it comes to the news, usually by the time the information gets into the news media, it's more of reporting a crime that has occurred. So then and most of the time the ethics of, I'm assuming the ethics of journalism won't allow you to be sharing such materials online. And also the regulation for content that is allowed to be on TV and all those things won't allow for sharing of that information, of such pictures and images. But in terms of people on social media and all of that sharing those images, there's actually an act that prohibits that activity.
Thank you, Akuyo. And actually, I like that this question came up because I was even thinking about the whole Equiapim Polo situation with her son, and how there was this whole movement to get her thrown behind bars, which a lot of us felt was ridiculous because there were clear double standards at play. Because I think we've seen so many people in similar situations, even men who share pictures that are titillating, but no one screams bloody murder when they do it. But you can reflect on that a bit and I'll come back for your commentary. But before we move further, I want to read a comment that we have received from Yao Echampone J. And he says, I think to have a lot more influence, more women need to strive to own the media stations. The media houses are profit-oriented businesses that will thrive on sensationalism to court public attention, which they intend to sell to advertisers. So that's Yao's comments. Yao, I don't know if you're inclined to speak and elaborate further. Just raise your hand and I will call on you and give you 1 minute to elaborate on your thoughts. So, Yao, if you're still with us and you'd like to say something, you can unmute and say that now. Okay, we're not hearing Yao at this time, but anyone, if you'd like to respond to what Yao said, our panel or our audience members, please do go ahead, Lydia or Akuyo. Audience members, if you want to respond, please raise your hand and I'll call you at the appropriate time. So I'll come to you, Lydia. What do you think about what he's suggesting here? Is it a good idea? Is it far-fetched? Are there obstacles involved?
Very laudable. Very laudable. I think I said if we can, more people can get more media houses and the media stations, it will be very good. And what he's just said, what we have to do is to strive better. We the women, so we tell our big women who can do it to assist us to do it. We are ready to work with them. If they come in and we work together, I think we can do what Yao is trying to tell us.
Okay, thank
We
you.
have to put ourselves together as women And then, the men are assisting them. Men are assisting men. Why can't the women do it? We have women in Ghana who are more richer than some men in the country who are even building the stages. So why can't they do it? They can do it to assist us. And we are ready to work with them. And then nobody will underestimate any woman in journalism anymore.
I think it's a good point that you highlight that it's big women. And when we say big women, we mean wealthy women, because putting together a media house is no joke. It involves a whole lot of capital. And
A whole
so
lot of money, yeah.
a whole lot of money. I think it's good that you've thrown
And
the
that is why
challenge.
I said, there are women who are even richer than the men who are building those stations. Are you getting me?
Oh,
We
yes,
have women in the country who are more richer than them, so they can do it.
Right. So, Elizabeth, do you think the women who are well resourced, who are doing this, don't feel they have any stake in the matter, or they just don't care, or is it some other thing that's keeping them away from entering these kinds of endeavors?
Yeah, it's always difficult to answer things like these because at the end of the day, we are never in the minds of people. So we can only speak from the perspective in which we see things. But I would say in general, I believe it's a matter of misplaced priorities, and certain things are not as important to people as others. And so I'll give a very simple example of how funding helps to bring up different kinds of narratives. Because when it comes to news, when it comes to media, there are certain things that would always be center stage because those are sensational stories. Those are trending stories that people would always want to hear, that will bring in the numbers. And whether we like to admit it or not, be it news or media, whatever sort of outlet it is, they are in to make money. And so their main goal is to bring in numbers that will translate into the money so that they can pay their workers and also walk home smiling, or walk to the bank smiling. But then what funding does is that it helps to support people who are interested in stories that really wouldn't interest these media houses from the get-go. And so if you look at other countries, even in Africa, so I would say Kenya, South Africa, and most recently Nigeria, there are institutions and there are people who are funding journalists or all sorts of creatives to go in, get the resources, to go in and fish out stories that are very important for people to hear. And then when they get the funding to do these stories, they bring back the reports. And now you find that the media houses will be rushing for it because it has become a big deal. People want to hear more. People want to see who went, risked their lives to go somewhere to fish out a story. So I think that we need people to fund. Like Lydia says, we need women who are in power, women who have the resources to think of setting up funds for women journalists to go fish out women's stories, because that's the only way that we can hear other and diverse narratives and news that are very important to the masses as well. And so we really do need funding. And unfortunately, that's not the case in Ghana. And we have people who they are influential, but then they are not really interested in giving back to society one way or the other if it's not bringing them in something. And it doesn't always have to be monetary. They just want to be known, to be popular, that, oh yes, I did this, or I'm going to get a position if I do this. And so it boils down to misplaced priorities at the end of the day.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I picked up on something talking about how because of the lack of funding, we are not getting a diversity of all the various women's stories that are happening in real time in this country. So I actually want to ask Lydia, who is a journalist, what are some of the kinds of women's stories that rarely, if ever, make it to the mainstream media, and the kinds of stories that we need to be paying attention to, not just as people in media, but as a collective citizenry, the kinds of stories that we never even know are happening right in this country called Ghana. If you can share a few examples of those, would be really grateful.
Yeah, Eliza just made mention of teenage pregnancy. are they not girls who are getting to teenage, becoming women? We can go to the places, go to remote areas, check the reason why. What exactly is happening over there? What is the cause? Is it because the parents are not taking good care of them? Is it the ladies or the girls who are naive? What exactly is the problem over there? We can do that. We have maternal deaths in our villages, even in some towns, due to bad road networks, due to bad health services and other things. We have maternal deaths among us. We have women in autism. We have women in autism. Women in autism, some are very good. There are some people you can talk to, they can do something. I've recently seen something on Facebook. There was this lady who has a daughter who has an autism, but she normally dresses her up like a model. She dressed her up like a model and she asked her to do this, do that. And the girl is very beautiful. We can go there, bring out all those stories. We have disabled who can still do something. And there are women indoors. We can bring them out to showcase their talents. I'm off.
We can hear you. We can still hear you. But thank you,
Hello?
Lydia. Yes, Lydia, we're
Hello.
here. Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
It won't be a crowd without technical difficulties. We'll try and get Lydia back, but I'm so glad she touched on Can you hear us?
Oh, shit. Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Okay, we might have to mute Lydia and then get her back soon. But I'm so glad she touched on the issue of persons with disabilities, because I believe they're a very neglected population in our society. There isn't much attention or focus given to them, especially women with disabilities. So let me come to you, Akuyo. What are some of the stories that you think are being neglected, especially as a lawyer in your daily work and the kinds of cases that you see that center women?
So there are lots of cases that you tend to come across in just your everyday going to courts. You hear, especially in the lower courts, you hear several domestic violence cases and matrimonial, particularly the matrimonial causes cases and the issues that come up with them. A lot of times you have things concerning property rights of women, and that's an issue that has been going on for years in this country. We are constantly debating who should be getting property when either there's a divorce or the spouse, someone passes away without a will. All those issues come up. And I think with the way our society is structured, we tend to focus on not necessarily how we can help. We just hear the information and then that seems to be the end. So sometimes they'll actually report the news, oh, this happened to this person, but then that's the end. We don't go further to find out what avenues what can help them. What is the social welfare department doing? Like, where can the person go for help? If the person has to go, what if you have to go to legal aid, what do you have to do? What's the framework that's been set up to help us move from just either hearing the news at all and going forward to solving or giving aid to the people who have been reported about. So a lot of times, sometimes, yes, we do hear the news information, but then it ends there. Like, we hear the stories and it ends there. There's nothing else to it. We are just told, oh, so this happened to this person, and then that's it. We don't know, we don't tell them how you can get help and how you can move forward with your life and what you can do. And you mentioned the persons with disability. yesterday there was a lady on here who, yesterday's program which was women occupying spaces. There was a lady on here who was talking about being blind, and I think she was a teacher. I stand to be corrected. Elizabeth can correct me on that if I'm.
Yeah, she's a student. Yeah, Nina, she's a student at the University of Ghana, currently doing master's here.
A master's, and she was talking about being a person who she's blind and being a disabled person and functioning in our society as a woman as well. So not only does she have to deal with being blind, but not only does she have to deal with being a woman, but she has to deal with being blind as well. And she was talking about the struggles that she faces and how she's overcome them, and how she's managed to essentially move on and occupy a space in our Ghanaian society.
Thank you. Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is that media houses have a certain responsibility in their news reportage to also amplify the resources that are available, particularly to vulnerable populations like women and persons with disabilities. So I hope, Lydia, these are some of the things you carry to your colleagues as well, making a push for this kind of enrichment of our news and media space. We have a couple of more minutes to wind up. So audience, please, if you have any questions, contributions, comments to make, please feel free to leave them in the chat box, and we will definitely address them as we move along. I'll come to you, Elizabeth. This whole fix the country protests and movements that has generated over the past few months, culminating in today's very vigorous and passionate protest. Where do we situate these kinds of actions in this conversation about how women are represented in media and news? Should there have been placards today talking about this very topic, with people marching and showing anger or outrage over how women get treated? Or are there other fora for these kinds of conversations as we're doing here?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and thanks for bringing that up, because it's funny how this morning, I actually didn't know about the protest until yesterday. And so I was asking a few friends, are they going, what's going on? And so this morning I had calls from two male friends who were asking if I'm going, because they were going. And if I'm going, I need to, be with them so that I can be protected and not get into trouble in case there is a riot or something happens. And I couldn't go, but I was just thinking to myself how people do understand the vulnerability that women are exposed to in certain spaces. So I was just thinking, imagine there are women reporters who would want to go and cover this news, but are unable to because they would have the fear of falling into harm's way if they should expose themselves to such a crowd. And so these are also just limiting factors as well that prevents certain stories from coming out, or certain stories to be covered by women. So I just wanted to point that out. And now your question was mainly about if we should have seen placards on, the anger towards the way women are represented, or the issues concerning women. I think that there are certain highlighting points for every crowd that comes together. And so with this Fix the Country, people are really focusing more on the economical issues the country is facing, the hardships that people are going through because of the rising increase in fuel and food costs. And so as someone who always tries to respect the cause for everything that's happening, I think that for the Fix the Country, the highlight is specifically on the economical hardship of the country, which is fine. But that is not to say that we cannot have these issues come up when these things happen. I think that it shows that our society, we only think about these things when it is trending, or when there's a story that makes the news. And so it's not really in our minds, at the forefront of our minds when certain things happen. I'll give an example in Nigeria when they had the protests, although it was specifically to the government and also the hardships that they were facing. We saw placards that had different kinds of, other issues, and be it the LGBT community, be it the safety of women as well. And so it does show that it is in the forefront of the minds of the people in Nigeria, probably more than it is here. So I think that's, I don't know if I'm making my point quite well, but I feel that we have the space to respect the main action for this protest. But then I also think that we didn't see placards on these things. I mean, we haven't seen all the pictures from the protest yet, but we haven't seen any of them on social media because these things are not on the forefront of our minds on a daily basis. And so it shows that we only think about them when they are trending. So that's what I have to say about that.
Thanks. And actually we have a comment from Nanaya who reminded me that there actually was a placard geared towards the luxury tax on sanitary products for females when we go through our period. So I think that was the only women-oriented placard that I saw, and it was a very important. Yeah, it was a very important one as well, because we've been having this debate and this conversation over and over and over again that it's so ridiculous that something women cannot control biologically, we are rather being taxed for and essentially punished for being women because we can't tell our bodies to cease menstruation at will, whether we like it or not. Until menopause, we are going to keep bleeding. So any serious government that really cares about women should make that kind of issue a serious one. And thank you, Elizabeth, for highlighting how oftentimes these kinds of social issues take the back burner in favor of economics, because people's wallets, the pinch that you feel in your wallet is what tends to dominate people's minds. But there is a point about how women are also part of the economics of our society. Women make slightly more than half of our total population. So if men are feeling an economic pinch, then best believe that women are even feeling it on probably a greater level, because there are different dimensions to how economics impact us, especially when we look at some of these things, such as the sanitary towel tax and a whole host of other things. Market women are the backbone of our economy. So for our issues to not be given much prominence in these kinds of protests and demonstrations, I think it shows how we are lagging so far behind in our quest for progress in supporting women. Okay, so we have roughly slightly less than 15 minutes. I do want to ask to everybody how exactly we go about changing the discourse on women in news and other media, be it social media, whatever media. I think I will start with Akuyo on this question. Audience, if you have any thoughts, please feel free to share them. Raise your hand and I will definitely bring you on screen for a minute or so. So Akuyo, over to you.
Thank you. First, I'd like to point out something that as I was doing all my research and reading for this, I found very interesting. That every time you Google the news, if you Google women's issues, it comes up as all the things we've been discussing. And I was wondering if it would not be interesting if we change it from being women's issues to like a societal issue, because women make up, as you mentioned, a slightly larger percentage of the society in Ghana. I think the census from the last, I think 2010 was when we had our last census, shows that women make up, I think 51% of the population. So instead of always calling it women's issue, women, it narrows the scope of who it applies to, because traditionally women are essentially marginalized in our community. So then it narrows the scope, and then we just have it being just one part of society's issue. But if we broaden and change the language and make it society's issue or societal issue, it extends the duty of ensuring that these issues are dealt with. It's not just women's problem, it's a society problem. So both women and men have to find ways of solving them. Back to the initial question which you asked, which you'd have to repeat, sorry.
I was essentially asking what we can do to essentially improve how women are treated and reported in media, all types of media, be it traditional, social, what have you. And I think it's quite interesting that you talk about language and how to frame these issues and shifting them from being exclusively women's issues to societal issues. I just have to wonder, is there an element of that where we stand the risk of erasure, right? Erasing women's issues totally in the reframing process? Or do you believe that reframing is strictly the way to go? There's no risk at all that women bear?
I don't think there's a little bit of a risk that it could be overtaken by other things if you say society's issues. But in framing it as society's issues, you can still highlight the main things that you're talking about, be it violence against women and girls, or luxury tax on period products, whatever it is. But if you frame it as the whole society, it gets everybody together. It includes the men, it doesn't exclude the men. You get the men in the conversation and work with them, or work well alongside them, to find solutions that doesn't feel like they're being, because I've heard a lot of people, mostly men, say that, but once you guys start talking, we're marginalizing them. And I believe the program that you were on, I used to listen to you guys religiously. And yes, there was a period where people were like, oh, you just want to marginalize the men and not have them be involved. That's not it. We are highlighting the issues that women face, but we are recognizing the roles that they can also play in ensuring that all these issues are dealt with.
Thank you. So do you want to answer the question about what we, beyond the reframing, if there are anything else that we can do to transform the way women are presented?
Beyond the reframing, well, there's education as well. There's ensuring in both formal and informal education. And honestly, I think it's mostly the talking about the issues. Like the more you talk about it and the more you have people come together to discuss the issues, and to forums like this, raising the topic, bringing up the topics, and communicating and creating avenues for communication without judgment, all of these things help with the cause and the movement.
All right, thank you, Akuyo. Lydia, over to you. Same question. What are some of the things that we could do to transform the way women are presented?
Women in society often give up working because authority do not protect them, and impunity is the norm. So due to this, I think we can still add gender balance. We can add the men, just as Akuyo said, so that whenever a discussion we have, if you go together with them, we see the advantages, the disadvantages, the do's and the don'ts together. If they are in and we add them together to whatever we do, they might feel for it, and then we'll maybe stop one or two things that normally try to underestimate us. I don't know whether you're getting what I'm saying. And then in the other course, we can also add the men to whatever we discuss, and also talk to the men to be adding the women to whatever they do, so that we'll get a gender balance from them for us to move forward better than doing it as womanhood. it must not always be women. No, it must be a balance something so that we learn from them and they also take part from ours too.
Okay, so men have a role and responsibility to play in amplifying women and helping to present women in the lights that we deserve to be presented. Elizabeth, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I think Akuyo and Lydia are saying the same thing, that we do need to include the men in these kinds of conversations, because we, even though I think it's a two-way thing. So we are trying to project that women's issues need to be presented more. And then we also don't want to alienate it so much that it becomes a women-only agenda or thing. And so as we are highlighting, we are also reminding the men that they are part of this course, that we are part of societies and our topics are not that special to be removed or to be highlighted in different ways. I can give an example. If you watch the news a lot, they have the stories that come, and then they have the section for business news, they have the section for international news. Sometimes then they have other news, and then the other news is always women related stuff. So then women, Minister of Women and Gender Affairs or Culture and Tourism, who is usually always a woman, would have something to say. And that's when it's always alienated. And so we need to bring it back into the main news items while reminding them that there's a way in which you should tell women's stories and news, and also encouraging more women to go into journalism, because that's the only way we can also have different narratives. I just wanted to add a little to the question that you spoke about. I think that keeping it very local within Ghana, what we need to do in the news or media industry is to kind of find the merging line between the English speaking media outlets and the Ghanaian language speaking media outlets. If you follow the news quite closely, you realize that sometimes there are news items that are presented with the Ghanaian language news industry that we don't hear in the English speaking media houses, and then vice versa. So sometimes things are happening in society and we are so in a bubble. Everyone is in their bubble because there's no merge. So I really feel that once we find the merge, we would see the other sides of things and we'll know what we need to do together to present the news well, and then to also have a diversity in the way the news is presented. That's something that I wanted to add, because sometimes you sit in a church or in a taxi, and that's the only time you hear about women who are having issues and stuck in Libya or in Dubai. And then once you're out of your church or you're back into listening to your City FM on your phone or something, these things don't come. And then if you listen a lot to City FM and things and other English speaking, I'm saying City because they are one of the most popular when it comes to news. Not that I don't like them or anything, just because we are live on Facebook, so I don't want. But when you listen to the English speaking media houses, there's also one type of narrative that we hear, and then you are so alienated from what is happening. And then when you look at the population, majority of our population don't speak English. And so they are carrying the society, whether we like it or not. So we really need to find that image, the way they understand women's issues, the way they approach and react to women's issues is what is building the society, because they're in the majority. So when we find when we merge the two and find that the boundaries that are blocking us from relating to each other, I think that there will be a bit more progress and the progress will be faster.
That is a very brilliant and fantastic point. Essentially, there is an elitism or classism type of separation in our news media, where it's like the upper to upper middle class to wealthier classes, the English speaking radio stations and their kinds of interest stories are what are given attention to. And then you have the local dialect stations that are more concerned with what's happening to the everyday Ghanaian across the whole country, and they are not talking to one another. So essentially, we have two Ghanas, and I don't think either Ghana is doing quite well, especially on the women reporting front. And it makes me wonder: are there different ways that the journalists in the local dialect stations are educated versus how the English speaking stations are educated, and what role DJA has to play in all of this? Because they have been trying to feed in a question that centers the Ghana Journalism Association, but unfortunately, we're pretty much running out of time, which Elizabeth tells you that we need to further this conversation and delve deeper at another point. So this is just something to think about. I think that this is a very wonderful way to round out our conversation. How do we get all media, especially all the journalists in different sectors, harmonizing their news and making sure that every Ghanaian, regardless of social status and class, is well informed, well educated on the salient conversations, especially centering women in our media spaces. So thank you everybody for tuning in. I don't see any more questions from the audience. I'd like to thank our distinguished panelists, Lydia A, Akuyo Akuntu, Elizabeth, my homegirl Elizabeth, and everyone who tuned in to listen and contribute. Your views are very much appreciated and your time is very much appreciated. We do hope you join the rest of WomanFest activities throughout the week and be climaxing over the weekend. We look forward to having you and seeing you. And it's been a fun one for me. I've been your moderator. My name is Amazing Grace Danso. You can call me AG. I'm a troublemaker on social media, so you can always find me there. So that's it from me. I hand it back to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Amazing Grace, and you've done a very amazing job handling this session. So thanks once again. And to our guests, Lydia and Akuyo, thank you for giving us your time. This wouldn't have been possible without you. We appreciate the different perspectives that you brought to this discussion, and I believe that everyone here has taken something away. So not to take much of our time, I'd just like to say that the festival continues tomorrow till Friday and till Saturday, sorry. And tomorrow we have a conversation on self-defense as a survival skill. And we're going to talk about the importance and also learn a few tips on how to stay protected out there as women. And we'll be joined by Kezia Beje, and she is a Taekwondo and fitness instructor and a black belt holder. And this particular conversation has been put together by Farida Yusuf, who is the founder of the Boring Talkative, an initiative that is trying to get women to be stronger and be able to defend themselves and speak up on women's issues. And so join us same time at 7 p.m. The Zoom links will be available. If you go onto our IG page, WomanFest GH, you can look at the link in our bio to register. And we'll also post the Zoom details later in the day tomorrow. So thank you once again, everyone. Do enjoy your evening and spread the word about WomanFest and join us for our other sessions. So it's bye for now.
Bye.
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 Okay, so thank you, Akuyo and Lydia. I see you're still here. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. That was interesting.